visionaries, creative change agents who are doing amazing things in the world, and I know that you've been inspired. I've heard from so many of you that it has made a difference in your own life and that you feel you can make a difference. And that was part of our mission going with this summit. And it's not over yet. We have Marianne Williamson with us today. She is a visionary. She is an internationally acclaimed author and lecturer. 6 of her 10 published books have been New York Times bestsellers. Her books include A Return to Love, A Year of Miracles, The Law of Divine Compensation, The Age of Miracles, A Course in Weight Loss, Everyday Grace, A Woman's Worth, Illuminata, The Gift of Change. And today she has a new book that was released in June called Tears to Triumph, The Spiritual Journey from Suffering to Enlightenment. Welcome, Marianne.
Oh, thank you so much.
I read this book, and I would love to know why you chose this time to write this book and share this message.
Well, there's not a rational calculation for what I write about. If I am passionate about something, then that's what I feel the need to write about. It's what I feel compelled to write about. And I also think the only chance you have to reach other people at a deep level is if you're speaking from your own depths. So, and also, you know, there's this issue of how all minds are joined. I found in my career that it's been pretty true that if I'm speaking about something that's really happening for me, it tends to be happening for other people too. I read a line from a man named Arnold Patton once where he said, if you genuinely have something you need to say, there is someone out there who genuinely needs to hear it. So it's what felt real to me at the time, a topic that needed to be discussed, particularly because, as you know, reading the book, there is an epidemic in our society today of the overprescription of antidepressants to people who are going through what we would think of as a normal spectrum of human suffering. You know, mental illness is one thing, schizophrenia and bipolar. In situations like that, a conversation around psychotherapeutic drugs is reasonable. But when someone has been through a heartache because of a bitter divorce or lost their job or lost a lot of money or someone you love died, these things are painful, but they're not mental illnesses. And we have medicalized human despair using labels like depressive disorder, anxiety disorder, for things that are perhaps not disorders, but the natural grief of life. And I know for myself, as someone who is a student of spiritual principle, then spiritual principle is so rich, deeply rich, with information and guidance about how to transform suffering. And I thought, wow, there needs to be a book talking about, well, how about if you leave this to nature, to God, to spirit? What does that look like? So I felt that was a book that should exist, so I tried to write it.
Oh, I love it. And you do talk about how grief and sadness are part of a transformational process. And knowing what's going on in the world around us, people are grieving. They are in despair. And I think I'd love for you to talk about your spiritual prescription and what that looks like.
I think that the point for me is that suffering is sort of part of the normal, it's part of the normal life span that any of us live. You know, if you don't learn how to navigate the turbulent waters of life, you don't learn how to navigate life, because life on this earth is sometimes hard. And that is because, from a spiritual perspective, the consciousness that prevails within the experience of the human race is based on fear rather than love. Every day of our lives, we are confronted by situations, by voices, by factors that repudiate who we are deeply, repudiate the love within us, repudiate the idea of our oneness, repudiate the idea of brotherhood, repudiate the idea of unity, repudiate the idea that we have any value, intrinsic value. We are taught that we're only valuable if we achieve this or are able to buy that. We are taught more to compete with each other than to collaborate each other. It's very easy to think the world is more dangerous than safe and beautiful. And so, of course, we're all at the effect of the stress and the anxiety of this moment, whether it has to do with our own personal circumstances or the larger circumstances that we're also aware of that are enough to make any of us sad. So spiritually, the idea here is that we are not meant to be at the effect of all that pain, but neither are we meant to ignore all that pain. We are meant to transform all that pain. Like you were talking about earlier, about being a change agent. But you can't be a change agent until you yourself allow yourself to be changed. And we cannot be changed on a deep, fundamental, otherworldly level unless we go to a deep, otherworldly source. And that is where spirituality
Let's talk about what that
comes
is. Could you, I loved about, when I was reading about the Four Noble Truths and,
Right.
how we need to identify suffering
Right.
and right intention,
Right.
because I think those are things that will start that process of healing and owning that we have power with God, whatever our source is.
Well, we begin with the notion that of ourselves, we don't have so much power.
Right.
But that there is something in us, and you can call it by many names, but it is in essence unconditional love, unconditional compassion. And when we wake up in the morning and we align ourselves with this, knowing that the world is driven by something else, that's why in the morning, meditation, prayer, focus on some serious spiritual path is everything, because the mind is lured away from that. If you wake up in the morning, the first thing you do is you go to the internet, to the phone, to the news, to the thinking of the world, and you download that. You will be depressed because you've volunteered to place your own mind at the effect of the insanity of the world. If instead we meditate, we pray, we move into what you were just talking about in Buddhism, right concentration, right mindfulness. Every religious and spiritual tradition has its own enunciation of this. You wake up in the morning and you take a stand for what ground you wish to stand on today. Because if you're only standing on the ground of the world as it is commonly defined, you will be in stress and you will be anxious and you will be depressed at some point or another. But you can claim a higher ground. But that will take time to download through meditation, through prayer, etc. The next thing you do is you say, I am going to send my love before me today. And you close your eyes and you think of all of the people that you are going to see today. And you think of all the people that you don't even know yet that you are going to see. And you send your love before you. And you say, my wish for today, my goal for today is to be an instrument of love and peace in the life of everyone I think of today and everyone I interact with today. Now, this is an act of self-care, because what you think of others, there is no such thing as a thought that only affects other people. Every thought we think affects ourselves. And so whether we are following the dictate of that kind of conduit, that kind of intention to be a conduit of love, as it is articulated in Buddhism, as I put in the book, articulated through the prescriptions of Judaism and the Old Testament, as I put it in the book, or through the teachings of Christ, as I put it in the book. It all amounts to the same conversion from a body identification to a spirit identification, where we do not allow anything but love to come before love, which is really what it means in the Ten Commandments. Put no God before me. That God is God, and God, the otherworldly source of love. Right now, we make money our God. We make worldly achievement our God, and because of that, we're as Buddha said, the things of this world can only bring you temporary happiness at best. So if half the time we're struggling and we're grasping to make this or that happen because we think that then we'll be happy. If I get that job, then I'll be happy. If I get the money, then I'll be happy. If I get that house, then I'll be happy. And then even if you get it, it will, that bright shiny object will bring you happiness for 10 or 15 minutes. And then, as Buddha said, it will only bring temporary happiness, and then we're in despair because it didn't do everything we thought it would do. So learning to discipline our minds, that's discipline, discipleship. It comes from the same root. We discipline our minds to surrender a thought system based on fear. that dominates this world and to accept instead the thought system based on love that is natural to our true being. Otherwise, we cannot be happy in this world. We cannot feel comfortable in our skin, and we will at some point or another be depressed.
I love that. And let's talk about prayer. I mean, there was some, about prayer. People say, well, I told God, I want this or that. And I think you had mentioned in the book you have to ask God to change you, to open you up, to be on that hero's journey, to be that conduit. And we don't necessarily do that. And I think that's a great daily practice, ask to be that.
Well, this brings in the issue of free will. I am free, you are free, all of us are free to think whatever we want to think. That is what free will means. But the Course in Miracles says what we cannot do. We can think whatever we want to think, but what we cannot do is diminish the power of our thoughts. Every thought, the Course in Miracles says, creates form on some level. And because the spirit of fear rather than love, which is lovelessness, fear is to love what darkness is to light, it's the absence of the other. Because fear dominates the thought system that rules this planet, if we allow ourselves to be tempted to the thinking of this world, then we will be in fear. And that is the point of asking. That is the point of prayer. I am willing to interpret this situation differently. I am willing to see things differently. Because my body's eyes see one thing, my body's ears hear another. But sometimes what we perceive with our physical senses is at odds with what I know to be true in my heart. I'll give you an example. Let's say you woke up this morning and your husband, he just kind of brushed you off. He wasn't very kind. He didn't kiss you before he left the house. He didn't, he just doesn't seem to care. Well, go down that rabbit hole, man, and you will not be happy. But there is another way of looking at it, which is, what is the stress he's going through? If there's something going on between us, what part could I, even the littlest part, could I be playing here? How could I shift my focus to what he did right rather than what I perceive him to be doing wrong right now? I can know that the ego mind in me is like a scavenger dog and wants me to perceive guilt in my husband so that I can ruin this relationship and I can take a stand for greater love and compassion for him. And that's what prayer is. Dear God, I surrender to you my thoughts about my husband in this situation. I am willing to see this through the eyes of love, because if I don't, I'm gonna pour fire on a gasoline here, gasoline on a fire here. And that's what the dictates of the ego are in love. Seek but do not find. And that's what prayer is. Dear God, I surrender to you my relationship with my husband. I surrender to you my relationship with my work. I surrender to you everything in order that we might be lifted to a higher level of thinking, because then we are at a higher level of behavior and everything flows from that.
I know you call it somewhat the Pollyanna experience, and that we should be grateful for it. And I love that in the book, because I'm old enough to remember Pollyanna, and I was like, oh yeah, I love that story. And I have experienced other people saying, you're too Pollyannish. And what do you say to people like that?
Well, if you actually read the story of Pollyanna, she's a character of great power. She comes into a situation where every character is unhappy. And by the end of the book, clearly because of her presence, everybody's happy. So why should we be anything but excited if we are Pollyannas? I mean, right. Pollyanna came. She did not. It's not that Pollyanna. You don't get the feeling Pollyanna was stupid, but when that lady was mean to her and made her live up in the attic, even though it was a really big house, but her very bitter old aunt makes her live in the little attic room. She doesn't focus on that. She just focuses on the fact that she's happy to have a home to live in. And by the end of the book, I mean, it's like fairy tales, That's really what Pollyanna is. A fairy tale is where deep metaphysical truths are sort of expressed in cartoon form. This is a whole genre. The movie Avatar was that, by the way. When deep truths are represented and expressed in either a fairy tale or an iconic children's story like Pollyanna. So looking at the world through the eyes of Pollyanna is fine if you have the same effect that Pollyanna ultimately has, which is that everybody's happy by the end of the book.
I love it. So let's talk about forgiveness as a tool for change. And this is a quote you wrote in the book. The problem is not that we have so many problems. The problem is too many people feel numb to them or powerless to fix them, hopeless or disillusioned. Disillusionment is a good thing. So let's talk about what you mean there, and also about the power of forgiveness to create change. I believe that, and the reason I had this summit was so that we could have these different conversations, that people could hear different ideas and be inspired and try new things, and that there are solutions to the challenges out there, and that there is a personal responsibility to be who you would like to be in the world, to show love, to be forgiving, compassionate, empathetic, and then that then creates the ripple effect in the collective consciousness.
Well, what A Course in Miracles says is that miracles occur naturally as expressions of love. And of course, you can't have more of a change than a miracle. A miracle, the Course says, is a divine intercession from a thought system beyond our own. And what forgiveness means is that, let's say I'm having an argument with someone. Well, I'm upset because of something that they said or something that they did. So the first thing is the Course in Miracles makes a distinction between what we did and who we are. So when it comes to the realm of behavior, we make mistakes. Other people make mistakes. I make mistakes. We all do. And we make mistakes, i.e., behave without love, without righteousness, when we hit a wall, usually because of some childhood trigger. And in that moment, we don't know how to express our love and get our needs met. So we act from the wound. Now, somebody who focuses on my mistake 5 minutes ago is not giving me an opportunity to be different in this moment. And if they start focusing on what I did, they are actually fortifying in my mind my guilt. But also, that person focusing on my guilt is dooming themselves to be at the effect of it. Why? Because whatever we deem real will be real for us. Now, forgiveness is where somebody has done something or said something I don't like, that I feel is loveless, and I choose whether or not to focus on their guilt, instead knowing that I can choose in this moment to focus on who they are. Whatever I don't like that they did, that I feel was wrong, they did before this moment. And in this moment, what the Course calls the holy instant, I can focus on what is true. You are innocent and I am innocent. And in that moment, unbelievable new opportunities have a chance to emerge. You know, I have a relationship where I spent a long time thinking about forgiving myself and forgiving this other person. And when I saw this person after quite a period of time, it was like a whole new beginning was possible. But it was possible because for all those months, I had worked quite hard at atoning for my own errors, recognizing and taking responsibility in my mind for my part, and forgiving him for his. And so forgiveness is where sometimes people say, but what about boundaries? And what about when people are abusive and all of that kind of thing? Forgiveness doesn't mean I have to have lunch with you again. Forgiveness doesn't mean I need to stay in this form of relationship. That's not what forgiveness means. Forgiveness means I don't have to carry the burden of my attachment to your guilt. My attachment to your guilt, if I'm focusing on what you did, then the way consciousness operates is that I will be at the effect of what you did. So it's like the Course in Miracles says, the warden can't leave the prison any more than the prisoner can. If I don't let you off the hook, I can't be off the hook. So that is what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is our willingness to perceive, to extend our perception beyond what the physical senses perceive, the mistakes that people make, to a realm where all of us are innocent. And in any given moment, we all have a chance of beginning again.
I do. I love that. And I think as a society, we have to, and you had mentioned this earlier, we have to start looking for what's the same rather than what's different about us, and that we all want, about love and compassion, and that there's a human essence that we are all connected.
Well, it's our spiritual essence. That's the point. What's the same about us is that we all yearn to love and be loved. That's what is the same about us. At the deepest level, none of us are black or white or Jewish or Christian or Muslim or American or anything else. At the deepest level, and at the deepest level, we are one in that space of spirit. That's the ultimate realization, is that there's only one of us here. On the realm of the physical, we're all separate bodies. But on the realm of the spiritual, it's quantum. It's beyond time and space. We are, it's how much more intimate could we be than that at the deepest level we are each other.
Beautiful.
And that's what we feel when we deeply love someone. That's what we all feel when you deeply love someone, is that you feel there's really no place where they stop and you start. Because at the deepest level, that's true. At the deepest level, there is no place where you stop and I start.
What is your vision for going forward? There are so many gems in this book, that I could take. I'm just curious, what is your vision for the world? I know one of them is, about not using pharmaceuticals, but as a larger collective vision, how do you see the world evolving, especially in the turbulent times that we have right now?
Well, first I want to say it's not that we don't use pharmaceuticals. I mean, I glory in biomedical research as much as anyone. I go to the doctor. Yeah, I was talking about the overprescription specifically of antidepressants for people who do not have serious mental illness. I'm
sorry. Yes,
nothing to apologize for, but I knew you meant that, but I just want to make that clear for any of your listeners.
Yeah.
Obviously, what we all want. We want peace on earth. Sometimes I was looking out my window about an hour ago, right? And I'm overlooking this beautiful little quad at this little church seminary area. And there's this little girl. Oh, she looks like maybe, I don't know, a year and a half old. She's still in her diaper, and she's running around. She's the cutest little thing. And when I see children, and I see their innocence, and I see their beauty, and sometimes I say to myself with the little children, it's not like they're like angels, they are angels. And the world could be such that they could grow up happy here and thrive here, every child. We could do that. These are human decisions made that form a world of such chaos and so much suffering. I mean, yes, obviously there are natural disasters and so forth that make people suffer, but even so many of the so-called natural disasters happening today are happening, as it turns out, because of ill-conceived human behavior in terms of climate change and so forth. So my vision for the world and what I would want for my great-grandchildren is what all of us want, a world where we can live in peace, a world where a loving human interaction is the normal human interaction. I heard somebody say something the other day. I had a little tea for my New York volunteers at my apartment, and I had name tags. And this woman said something so interesting. She said, I think everybody in the world should wear name tags. And I thought that was such a good point. I mean, it was such a beautiful image. Obviously we don't everybody wear name tags, but the idea that you would just be walking down the street and you would know, oh, that's Barbara. Oh, that's Alan. That's David. That's Letitia. That was like, a world where, hi, how are you, is genuinely the common human experience. It's the rule rather than the exception. And not only that we say, how are you, but that we really, really care. That we make love the bottom line.
I love that. It was interesting. I had this experience once. I had gone to New Zealand for a month, and everybody was lovely and friendly, and everybody said hello. And I came back to Chicago, and I'm walking along the beach, and I'm saying, "Hi, good morning, how are you?" And they were like, "Who are you?" They took a step back, and it was so interesting because I had just been in that space of love and wanting to share. And I think, as human beings, if we start looking and saying everybody's got a story, everyone wants to be seen, heard, and understood, that we will change the world. That, as you said, to love and be loved is the message. And
to make it not, I'm sorry.
And not make it scary.
and not make it just theory. That's the thing. To literally, that's not be a concept. For instance, if you spend 2 minutes every day looking at people, and this is done silently, but you just look at people as you walk down the street or stand in line at the grocery store or whatever, And you say within yourself, you look at someone's face and you say, the love in me salutes the love in you. You say this silently to yourself. You don't say it out loud. The love in me salutes the love in you, or the God in me salutes the God in you. The light in me salutes the light in you. The whatever is true for you, the Christ in me salutes the Christ in you. I defy you to do that for 2 minutes a day and not be happy. That's the point, because that is the way the mind was created. That's the way the mind is intended by God to be used. And when I'm using my mind as a channel for love, that's when we can be happy, because that's when the mind is doing what it knows to do. When we are using the mind to judge and using the mind to attack, we can't be happy.
One of the things I do, and has changed my car rides, when you're on a long car ride and you've got to go downtown or something and it's 45 minutes, I really spend time in blessing people as I'm driving. I turn off the radio, and it's may you be blessed, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be at peace, and over and over, and
that'll
it changes my experience,
absolutely.
Of driving, and I do believe that that's the power of love to change everybody. And there are simple things we can do. As you said, it's not easy in the sense like forgiveness takes time, but there are little things we can do incrementally every day that are going to change us. I'd love to just ask you a few questions, because you are the first person I ever heard who said we should have a peace room rather than a war room. Could you just talk about that?
Well, it's like we have learned that health is not the absence of sickness. Sickness is the absence of health. One of the things I talk about in this book is that depression is the absence of happiness. Happiness is not the absence of depression. And same with war and peace. You can't just try to end a war. We have to cultivate peace. War is the absence of peace. Peace is not the absence of war. And so when we have a War Department, i.e. Defense Establishment, because when we feel we need to, and unfortunately in our country in the last few decades, sometimes when we didn't need to, but we need to have it for when we do need to, if it is deemed, we want to wage war appropriately and effectively. But we have evolved now to the point where we should be talking about how to wage peace appropriately and effectively. For an example, we know that there are two main components of peace creation. You create economic opportunity for women and educational opportunity for children. Those are the two largest components in a peaceful system. That there is educational opportunity for children and economic opportunity for women. You were talking about being in New Zealand and everybody seeming happy. More, at least. Well, they're not living in survival. It's a country where there are far fewer people, and it's just when people are in stress, people are in survival, then our best does not come out. And desperation, there's no root cause of conflict and violence like human desperation. We should see large groups of desperate people as a national security risk. And you could look at a lot of what's happening on the planet today, a lot of the worst problems we have. And you can go back and see, well, that group of people, you can see that was a petri dish for social pathology. And so peace creation, a peace room, means taking a very serious look at all of the situations that would be deemed by any intelligent calculation to be areas at risk. And when you have, whether it's a corner of a city, corner of a community, or corner of the world, where there's no educational opportunity for children, there's no economic opportunity for women, then you've got a ticking time bomb, and there will be some level of conflict within a certain amount of time, and to pretend otherwise is simply naive.
So what can we do as individuals to do that, to start changing this conversation and getting involved or making a difference?
Well, it begins with our own transformation, of course, with forgiveness in our own lives, with rising to the occasion of whatever we're being called to in our own lives. We don't take our own lives seriously enough. We have been trained into such a how can I get this, how can I get that mode, that we forget the issue is not how do I get this or how do I get that. The deeper issue is what am I not giving, not what am I not getting. Am I the employee I could be? Am I the employer I could be? Am I the mother I could be? Am I the father I could be? Am I the friend I could be? Am I the child I could be? Do I treat my parents? Have I forgiven who I need to forgive? Do I rise to the occasion? Am I a positive element in my life? Or am I perceived by others as needy or as controlling? Am I dishonest? Am I impeccable? Am I true to my word? Am I as ethical as I could be? Am I as mature as I could be? Am I as responsible? Am I deeply reflective? We're living in the middle of a political campaign. Am I looking at this seriously? Am I thinking about this seriously? Am I participating in a meaningful way? I mean, we all have lives that we are so busy thinking about what we don't have and what we think we need different or more, or we need other people to be different or more, as opposed to how am I doing? It begins with this. And the more we make our own goal that we ourselves be the people that God would have us be, then we will know what God would have us do, and we will know what God would have us do.
I love that.
And how to do it. And so it begins on, any given day, may I be the person God would have me be.
So it really is. It's asking the questions. It's going into inquiry. How can I be more loving? How can I serve others? Those kind of questions, rather than the get questions.
Well,
so
yes,
it's a much more expansive question that we need to start asking ourselves. And
yes, and the answers are not difficult. The issue is that we don't ask them enough. Your subconscious mind, everything. If you have left that person hanging, if you've not taken responsibility for what's happening in your own life, the ego mind is very sly and very insidious. It always wants to blame, whatever's not working in my life. It's their fault. I'm not getting ahead because they won't let me. And the spirit is always about taking responsibility, atoning for our own errors, and forgiving other people for theirs. And when we, in the book I talk about Buddha, I talk about Moses, I talk about Jesus. I myself am a student of A Course in Miracles. These days there are so many ways into that sacred room. There are so many ways, and many of us know what way speaks to us, and just sort of haven't been doing it. And then others might be listening and go, well, I just don't know what the path would be for me. And if that's the case, if you say a little prayer in your heart and ask, books will literally fall at your feet over the next few days. So there is for each of us, when we call, however, even weakly in our hearts, dear God, I am willing, but I kind of don't know how to do this. God, if we do our part, God does his. And love makes its way in as soon as we open the door and invite it in. And then life begins in a whole different way, and you're not talking about superficial change. Then you're talking about really living our lives from a different place. Then we become real players. Then we become really effective. Then we rise to the occasion. When God said to the Israelites in their journey through the desert, I will make of you a nation of holy people. Metaphysically, that's speaking to all the children of God, which is all of us. I will make of you a nation of holy men, of holy leaders, of holy religious people. That means that if you're a teacher, you will be raised to a level of such power as a teacher. If you were in business, if you were in science, if you were in the arts, it means that when we put ourselves in service to the divine lifts us up and makes us successful and makes us amazing in whatever it is that we're doing. Then you're a change agent. Otherwise, you're just moving the furniture on the Titanic. There's no depth there. There's no charisma there. There's no Shakti there. There's no power of the Holy Spirit there, whatever words you want to use. And that's really what we need in order to change the world today. Superficial change is not going to do it.
And for those people who are, starting their journey today, because they've heard you, what would you tell them? What would you tell them and say, oh, wow, I heard her. Now what do I do?
Think of one person. Think of even one person that you're judging, one person that you're still focused on what they did wrong and how they didn't do what you wanted them to do, and be willing to forgive. Say, God, I am willing to see this differently. See any situation in your life that causes you pain and say, dear God, I am willing to see this differently, and amazing changes will occur.
I love that. Thank you. And how can people get a hold of you or your book?
Thank you. Marianne.com, MARIANNE.com is my website, and people can get the book Tears to Triumph in, Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, any of the usual places, bookstores and stuff where you get your books. And I hope it's helpful and inspiring and comforting. That's certainly my intention in writing the book.
Well, it was to me. I loved it, and there's just, I know I don't know if you have it in your heart right now, but I love this prayer on page 141. I don't know if you have the book in front of you.
No, I don't.
But if you don't mind, I'd love to read it because I feel like
this just
Thank you. Called to me. Dear God, please make of my life a beautiful thing. Guide me on an illumined journey from the darkness of the world to the light that is you. Make of me a conduit of good, that I might help transform the world, set my feet upon a hero's journey, and my heart on an enlightened path. Amen.
I was going to say, that's so nice.
It was beautiful.
I forgot it was mine.
Yes, you wrote it. It's like I used it today before as part of my ritual. I said, "Ooh, this prayer's perfect." So it was like this because I try and do that every morning. I have a routine, where I journal and I pray and I meditate and it's so interesting because your book is so much we are one, and it was like,
right.
Ray, we are one, and you and I are one, and it was like there is no difference. And I was able to, in my meditation, get to that place, and that's what I want for everyone, that we are one, that we are love, and that we have great gifts that have been given to us by Spirit, and that we're here to share them. So thank you, Marianne, for being part of this conversation.
So
and everybody, go get her book. It will change your life. And I look forward to hearing from you tonight on our wrap-up. And thank you, people, for all the people who've listened and participated and commented on our Facebook group, The Creative Activists. We are here to be a light to the world, to show them what else is possible. And with speakers like Marianne and all the other speakers that we've had, it has been my blessing and my gift to me and to the world to be able to share their stories. I have felt such deep reverence for everybody's words and ideas. And thank you all for participating. Have a great day. Thank you, Marianne.
Thank you.